So the third output of this result is are the training manuals that have been developed for trainers, for career practitioners. So, but this workshop is focusing on the LMI toolkit, or LMI, or labor market information, but we used to call it LMI toolkit for short. I will briefly introduce myself and my colleague. I'm Stephanie DERVISHER. I work for West Research and Strategy, which is a Belgian independent research company, and I work there as a labor market and education expert, including guidance, of course. And I enjoyed this project really very much. We've been working on it for 2 years, and now it's like the first real test. You are actually one of the first persons to see the results. It's also live on the website. I will demonstrate it. I will show it to you. So we are looking forward very much to receive your feedback and your input, because what we present today, it's not a finalized product. It's not a top-down product. It's a product that's still in a pilot. It will undergo a further development process, and I think Cedefop, who is who had the idea to develop these materials, is asking for collaboration of all the member states in developing further and making this set of tools a really useful and practical tool. I'm not alone here today. Today I'm here together with Lutz Kubitschke. He is working for Empirica. It's a German consultancy and research company. And together with other companies, Aspire and Qplan from Greece, we have been preparing these materials for Cedefop. Today, we have a 1.5-hour session to work together. The first half an hour, I will present to you the content of the toolkit, the design process. I will also bring forward some questions that we would like you to discuss in small groups during the next 30 minutes. And then when you finished that, we can all present each other's main ideas or comments to each other. And then that's it. Then I hope we have enjoyed an interesting session. So that's the plan. I would just like to go through the presentation, give you some explanation before. If you have questions, we can take them afterwards. And also the presentation of the toolkit on the website, I will do it after the presentation because I'm a bit clumsy in like switching between presentations. So I want to spare you that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the situating the LMI toolkit. I told something already in my introduction. I will tell you what are the global aims and the more specific objectives of this toolkit, how it was designed, also what information is included. Of course, this is the most important part. This is the content of the toolkit. We have some ideas already of how it can be used, but of course it's presenting to you, so we would really like to hear your opinion on that, and then the feedback and discussion. You can find already the link to this pilot website on this slide, so it's working. You can access it without a password, but I will show you later on. The Labor Market Information Toolkit is situating within the lifelong learning priority of Cedefop. So within the lifelong learning theme, they work on lifelong guidance. And in 2014, they started the work on labor market information for lifelong guidance. And as a result, we produced a first study. You can find the study on the website of Cedefop. It includes a literature review on labor market information and specifically labor market information for lifelong guidance. And we also did 12 case studies on both online and offline initiatives integrating labor market information for guidance clients. We have considered the whole range of lifelong guidance practice, both for educational choice and also for target for groups at risk and for people that are already in employment. So it's the broad concept of lifelong guidance that is applied here. After the project on LMI for lifelong guidance, the projects continued with now a focus on ICT, labor market information and lifelong guidance, because nearly all initiatives, organizations working on career guidance have different online tools for communication with clients. There are websites presenting information, there are online career tests, there's so much. So when it's important to have also some support material presenting some interesting insights, knowledge, and providing some inspiration. Here you can see this is the picture from the homepage of the pilot website. So the website is called Resources for Guidance, and we have to your left. It's the Labor Market Information Toolkit. We will discuss now the handbook with the good practices, the cases is there, focusing more on possible transferability to your country. And then the last element are the training manuals. And these tools are also kind of interlinked, because in the Labor Market Information Toolkit, there is not a deep focus on ICT, but then we refer to the training manuals and to the handbook with more information. So there's also kind of, we have linked the topics. So I already told you, we are in the start, I think, of a development process, which is still also being decided on how it will go on. But Cedefop has the ambition to make it really useful for career practitioners or for the career guidance community, and in a broad sense, not just career practitioners, but I think also policymakers, designers, methodological people. So I think it's it can serve a broad purpose. Then I would like to take a moment to share with you what was the view or the vision behind the toolkit when we started the first structures and reflections on what we should put in there. And actually, through the research, we have found that labor market information, as we define it, it's a combination of statistics, occupational information, information on rights and obligations, information on trends, information on educational choices. My list is not complete. So you can see labor market information, it's a complex thing. It's not an easy thing, but still it's important that all people can have access to this kind of information to make their career choices, of course, at a level that they can work with it and understand it. And that's why this toolkit has been designed. The toolkit is designed to support the career guidance community, actually, to help them to provide better the labor market information to their clients. Maybe not directly for the daily use, but to give inspiration, to create awareness. These are also the specific objectives that we thought that are important for the tool. So the first one is raise awareness about the importance of labor market information, labor market intelligence, and all the new evolutions or possibilities that arise. Specifically, of course, always for lifelong guidance practice. Provide some insights, some tips that we learned from studying the practices, some takeaways that are not necessarily in theoretical or study reports, but that we thought were important just to share. And also provide as an overview of other interesting resources and tools. It does not include labor market information in itself, so it's a kind of a meta tool. We have been discussing a lot about what can be or should be the target group of this toolkit, and maybe this discussion is not final yet. The first idea was to have a toolkit for individual users and for the career practitioners, but I think it's very difficult to create something for individual clients. So now we have changed the target group to the career practitioners themselves, and maybe also still a bit broader. So this is where the objectives, the global vision. We have translated this into some guiding principles when we made the first designs for the toolkit. And the first one is actually that there is an evidence base behind it. So it's we like the toolkit to have some kind of a body. It's underpinned by literature review, by original research, and of course by existing research. And it's also very important to mention that throughout the whole process, many people were involved in providing input. The toolkit also went through an early validation process with a relatively small group of people. And I think as the development continues, further validation, actually what we're doing today is also a kind of checkup and validation exercise. So this process, I think, will need to be expanded and continued. But there's already a lot of information incorporated in some way. We also wanted to be an effective tool, making use of user-centered design, also making it quite simple, an easy structure, not too much layers, not too much clicks to end somewhere. If you want to find something, because that's also the trend in website, the trends in websites building today. Another important issue is how do you make the link with the country, with the region, with the country you are living in. One way is that there is a specific section on where can you find more information, and there is for each EU member state, there's a place where you can put your own resources and links. And then you, throughout the tool, you will see there are some example, one from Finland or one from Latvia, and you can say, okay, what's the use? Because if you go to that website, you can't read it if you don't know the language. But we decided to keep it anyway because you have you can use a translation button, or and the quality of these translations these immediate translations have improved a lot. So we think it's still useful to have these examples from across the Union included. The toolkit will be translated into all official EU languages. So that's something that is absolutely necessary if you want countries to adapt it or have it used. That is first thing. It's not done yet, but that will be done the coming periods. So architecture and design, simple. There were some specifications with respect to software. Also, I think needs to be a maintenance process behind it. There are some references to other websites. It's very annoying if the links don't work. So, but it still also has to be decided who is going to do what. But the purpose is to have it maintained regularly, but keep it quite a simple thing. Otherwise, maintenance becomes too complex, and there's a risk that it ends up somewhere not being used, which is, of course, not the intention. Also, because the products will be online, you will be able to monitor if it's used or not, maybe where it's used or how it's used. For the moment, the application is hosted by Cedefop, and now the process will start to see how countries can be involved to feed in their own resources. This is not always an easy exercise, I think, because in some countries there is a strong network with someone who is coordinating the guidance community or making sure there is a link with labor market information providers. In other countries it's more complex and more fragmented, so that might be a point of attention. This is what we did actually as a team, was we wrote the first content, we wrote a content, and then we put it into wireframes. And then from the wireframes, the web team of Cedefop has developed it further into these images, and then we will go to the website within a few minutes. As to say, this is a preliminary version, so it can further evolve. This is the section where we provide all the sources, and you will see there will be a spot for the countries. Now, of course, we are talking about the process, the design process, development process, but what is the content of the toolkit? The content is in a question and answer structure, at least to start, to enter the toolkit. And there are 6 questions. The first question is, what is this toolkit about? Clarifying the purpose of the toolkit and how you can use it. The second question deals with the definition of labor market information. So what is labor market information for lifelong guidance? What is good labor market information for lifelong guidance? Give some list of quality criteria, and so forth. Then another question is, how can you integrate labor market information into guidance? It's also a very important but very broad question. So it's not, there are some inputs given there. And the next question is, what kind of labor market information skills do you need as a practitioner if you want to be able to integrate this in your services? Then the next question is, how can you work with labor market information for groups with special needs, for groups at risk? We are aware that we cannot give all the answers, but it's very important to raise this point, to make it visible, and also knowing that there are some or many initiatives and practitioners that have interesting solutions for this. And then the last question is taking the step further. Where can you find more information? We provide links to the European sources, the European networks, and of course then to the country-specific information. There's also, you can see here, a feedback function in order to allow people, once it's implemented, also to have interaction. So this is an overview of the 6 questions, and these are also the 6 building blocks of the toolkit. Now, how could it be used? We have been thinking about this, and these are the ideas we have at the moment. We think it's a stepping stone. It's not a tool where you can put every information together. This is not the point, and it's also not possible. But we think it's important to give inspiration, to raise awareness, and to make it maybe as a kind of a step for other activities. It could be included in national training modules. It could be kind of a self-study tool. It could be used for persons that are designing projects to check, for instance, the quality criteria, if what they want to do fulfills the quality criteria that can be derived for labor market information. There could be also a tool that could support intervision or interaction between practitioners when they work around the topic of labor market information. So there are many possibilities. So that was the introduction. Now I suggest I will go on the website. I will just have to make a walk and show it to you. It's not, well, we cannot read everything, it's too much, but I will show you the main blocks. So for those who want, you can, if you're on the internet or if you use your smartphone, you can also have a look at it. So it's also mentioned there. What is the link? The link brings you to the resources for guidance, or these are the three different projects that. These are the link brings you to the homepage where you find the three different projects, and the first one is the Labor Market Information Toolkit. So you can see, I can't bring it on a big screen. The purpose is that you have one screen where you see the 6 building blocks next to one another, in one overview. But the screen here is too small to show it to you, so you see the questions. So now I've chosen one question: what is labor market information for lifelong guidance? And then you can see some main text, a definition, also the quality criteria. And also these examples I mentioned. So these are examples from throughout Europe. It's also, it will be possible, there will be an export function, so you can, for those that like that, they can export it to a PDF document and then print it and read it on paper. But actually the purpose would be to have it more as an online tool. Oh, sorry. So this is just another building block to give you an idea. This is the section on how to work with groups with special needs. So this brings me back to our purpose of being here today, not just telling you what we have been doing and developing, but also asking for your first reactions. We know you don't have the time to read everything, but still you can have an idea already, I think. Maybe before I go to the work we would like to do in smaller groups, is there anyone who has a general question or something to Have
you completely given up making a similar tool for the citizens rather than the practitioners?
For the time being, yes. And I tell you why we thought within the given time and resources. We think that individuals in each country may have already access to a lot of different tools, and it would be very difficult, and it requires also a special, it's a different design process also, I think. And actually at the process, we will need more interaction with practitioners to see how it works, or if the target group has been well chosen. So for the users, you would need to have a different process. So I think that was it was a rather practical reason not to continue both paths for the time being. So what we had in mind as questions, We are very interested, and that's maybe the last question to start with, to know what you think when you hear all this, what are your first impressions? What do you think? What are your suggestions? What could you change? Then another question is, what kind of national resources would you include? And how would you connect it maybe with what you have in your country, on your region? That's also a bit the second question, in addition to how can we keep it up to date in terms of, well, how regularly, but also maybe how, who, what, because it's, as I told you, it's not that easy maybe. And then how could you or would you make it available to your career guidance community in your country? So these are some specific questions for further development, and of course also the general feedback. How are we going to do it? You can make the little groups as you sit. Maybe the people that are with two, you can join another, maybe with the two people at the back, or, well, you're free. We give you a very old-fashioned paper and pencil thing, because you never know. Sometimes things work and sometimes they don't.
I mean, we have been experiencing some trouble with the network, so we thought we'd just print out something to write on to be able to take.
So you can discuss the questions and you can write some of your conclusions of your team. We will take it with us, but what we will also do afterwards is listen to each group individually, just to make sure that that everyone knows what you have been discussing. We are available for questions or support if you would need it.
Because it's on the test server. Perhaps one remark in relation to timing. So we thought we have an hour to go from now on. Perhaps we spend half an hour for discussion and half an hour then we have a bit time to discuss and react and play the ping pong with ourselves.
Not a couple of institutions develop it, one institution did it for
I had it on my
Just under construction, you know, it's not really. So Cedefop's web team there needs to organize logistics indication. And they just made it. So it's just
Possibly, I mean, yeah, probably not even worse to spend a lot of time on reading. I mean, what is the general idea? So it's because it's
Yeah, so that's something we will take that. Someone has ways to write such a great issue.
No, sorry.
In reality, it goes often like that. But this kind of reuse of the background information,
Supposed to be more than that one when it refers to when this is coordinated or whatever by the official national guidance forum or something like that.
more in the case of then of course you have to go and start working on it. That would be
Starting from the content.
This is interesting, it's an interesting collection and the right place. After working myself, that is free. And so they found the egg of the whatever.
Current guidance. We have the impression what is the current
Besides, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Not only what, but besides.
What do you mean by the country you have on your side?
There's another question, even more important.
Who decides which information if you say everyone can agency, then you put the weight on the agency report. And you say there's someone who is interested also, and there's not
Guarantees that you send it But I really like this question. It's even more important to ask why they did it and why you should
More family for
It's more polite to write sharp and a little bit wide. That's what I said. If it is accepted as an impact proportion, then I have two, but it's official information about the size for all the others. You can rely on second
generalize to say that for customers special for the need of a sector or need of a need of a university, we can't actually name our questions, right? So it's for me, I just make it very, very general. So it's
And then I think the tool for practitioners is interesting to compare, to have the standardized information and a standardized grid.
That's a step further.
Yeah, but that's a good point.
You have reached these tools. The comprehensive integration. That's know it because
This is like managing all our
That's all it was.
services in countries and establishing some kind of common guidelines.
But if I shall show you that way, or you do it on a cell phone, that you don't understand anything but in Dutch.
You have to say on Eurex's website where you can compare countries and you can put one detail in the other. And then for specificities for a country, you have a link to the country website and you can go deeper into but generalities. For example, if you need to be first year the compulsory. There are 6 years of compulsory fees.
You have to follow my session and you make a chapter.
So about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, we can discuss the last 5 minutes with you.
Sometimes it's very difficult that they are actually possible to seek out the kind of information and
Start with us, yeah, explain us what the misunderstanding is.
Maybe it's also for people that design in your group that they can make examples. This is what they think of, doesn't exist everywhere. It's also needed because yes, for practitioners only, they don't need to put information about their own country, but it is for the algebra. It's like a program. It's not necessary for practitioners. Probably the next one is start the group thing. People who make it more
Okay. Thank you all for having lively discussions. Ah, yeah, you can do it. Okay, thank you. If you're all ready or more or less ready, we are very happy to listen to what you have been thinking or finding. So I will start maybe here with the first table and listen to your ideas.
So I shall report for the first group, and I must say at the beginning that we produced rather questions than answers.
That's also a possibility. You're not the only one, I think.
So for the first question, we were thinking like, who would validate the sources to be included? Who will have the right to access the system and to enter the sources and links? And what is the added value to already existing sources, like for example, which US has got and is using?
Yes, that's important. Mm-hmm. Thank you. No, we just take all the, yeah.
Mm-hmm. For the second question, how would you keep the national resources and links up to date? There we think that in the near future, like in year 2020, there would be a new technology that it could be automatically updated.
That's good, a bot.
And question number 3, how can you make the LMI toolkit available to career practitioners in your organization, region, or country? It must be some way of awareness raising on the national level, trainings which would include this tool, webinars. And we agreed that it would be useful to have trainings not just about this tool, but to have like complex training about sources which are related, which are
more advanced modules.
Yeah, to get the complex
like
view
on big
of
data or
sources and links which can be used.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, thank you.
And the last question, what are your suggestions for the toolkit for further development? At this point, we don't know well the content, so it would be good first to know well the toolkit and then to see what could be added or changed. But we think it has to be interactive, attractive, responsive design should be used, and also handy and useful infographics should be used.
Yes. Thank you. It's okay, we can just do it like that. No, thank you. The next table, yes, you're going to
We
present.
were the
Thank you.
most troublesome group, I believe. Over 99% of our time was spent on trying to decide what kind of national information could be actually put into, which led us to the discussion about the target group for the toolkit. What we had the difficulty with was how the information put by national sources were actually different from already existing databases like EURES. So while trying to ascertain what's the difference, we went to target groups, and one of the conclusions was that if it's for practitioners in a specific country, they don't actually need to know what's in their country because they are required to know it from other sources. So what would be actually useful to, for instance, people from Poland see what kind of information are available in France, and people from United Kingdom to see what kind of information are available to practitioners in Luxembourg. But unfortunately, it took most of our time. So our main conclusion is very general, and it says, well, you could include information on the analysis of the labor market. So unfortunately, we all need to define what exactly this means. So apologies for that. However, we also managed to answer one more question, even though maybe not very well. We proposed question number 4, answer to what could be done with the toolkit how could it be developed. So we proposed to add features to the website that would allow it to be accessible to people with difficulties like different contrast, larger fonts, and I realized there's a very large handbook over 100 pages long for web designers to include those features, but that's what we came up with.
No, that's a very good suggestion, I think. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I also keep in mind, we had an interesting discussion, so we also take that with us. Thank you. I go to the back. I don't know who will speak.
Yeah, hello.
Okay, hello.
We will start from question number 4. We were trying to see what kind of information the toolkit offers, and we will suggest it's not more like a toolkit, but more like guidance or information website. And it's not that much about labor market, but more about career guidance. And in order, and it will be the first thing that should be done is to define the purpose behind it, so as the information should be more specific and define a target group, so as to give information more specific to that target group. And regarding question 1, it's, what the first team said is what we will suggest is you need to decide who has responsibility for the quality of information and who decides what kind of information is included for each country. And it has to be what is important and what is relevant. And okay. And okay, about question number 3, you can share. It's easy to share once you have it done. It's easy to share it through social media or your national website. Yeah, that's it from us because we previous groups said most of them. Yeah,
you agree also with what the others have been saying. Okay, thank you. There you go.
Hi. I think it's fair to say we found this quite difficult to answer, but I think that just reflects what a challenge this actually is. In the UK, I gave a specific example of the UK. We have work coaches who aren't as skilled as perhaps other career practitioners across Europe, and I think that what that means is they would need to be able to understand the practical information more quickly. And I think it'd be useful if the website could signpost to this in a clear way, because work coaches in the current format, I don't think that they would find the detail and the theory particularly useful. There are others in DWP, in my part of the organisation, that would, but the actual people doing the work and supporting clients, customers and citizens, I don't think that they necessarily would. So that's a bit of a specific example. We did think that information about how labour markets may look in the future would be useful, and we saw some interesting pictures, very simple pictures this morning in the main room. Also the potential for future professions and predictions for existing professions, you know, sort of growth areas perhaps. And overall, we felt that it'd be useful to see what the skills need for the future would be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perhaps including a guide for understanding both occupations and more broadly the sort of sectors that occupations might be in. So that was the first question.
Yes.
Question 2, we really just agreed with table 1 around how new technology to keep information automatically up to date would be incredibly useful. That's as far as we got on that question. Question 3, how can you make the LMI toolkit available to practitioners in your organisation, region, country? We discussed our specific individual areas of work and agreed that we had only for our own areas of work. For example, for me, working in employment, a friend here who works in education, that there were existing structures where information could be shared with people to educate people. Those structures seem to be in place. But again, only from fairly narrow perspectives. In my position in the UK, I think that we have, for individual areas of education, employment, etc., it works well individually, but not perhaps collectively. I think it's not very joined up at all. Okay, jumping to question 4. We thought that the website was currently quite text-based, and perhaps there was an opportunity to create maybe an inspiring video to say, well, to answer the question, what will people find here? And some, I suppose, more simple but important principles around the front page. Maybe it should just provide either all the information on one page without the need to scroll, or perhaps just the key information, bite-sized information that people will be able to, that people won't be overwhelmed by, I think is the way to describe that. And for individual areas, for example, we use the example of occupations. Again, perhaps just the key facts on one page with the detail behind it, if we thought that would be the right thing to do.
That was very clear and very useful. Thank you. Yes. I keep in mind like the hands-on aspect if you want to target the career practitioners. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. For question 1.
I will give you the microphone.
For question
Thank
1,
you.
we had sort of problems with limiting ourselves to national resources because we are, after all, talking about European level. We would like links to ISCED codes and ILO classification with fields of occupations. We would want a link to certificate supplements, especially in vocational training. In Denmark, all certificates will be issued in Danish, but also with supplement in 3 or more languages. We would want links to EURES information, like you mentioned. We would want something about EQF and NQF. And we would do something about job barometers, OECD reports, etc. But you can read it at your own convenience. For question 2, this is always problematic. We would expect the authorities that we would link to be committed to always being updated, and but someone would need at national level to be monitoring that there are no dead links, etc. In question 3, we would want, or we would at country level, we would have links on practitioners' organizations' websites. I represent one with 400 members. There's another organization in Denmark with 800 members, etc. And if they had links, that would be our way of dealing with our members. But of course, job centers would have their own systems. Then we just had a question, but you were sort of fairly clear about it. LMI is being interpreted as labor market information, but on other posters as labor market intelligence. I just wanted to be sure what was right and whether one sounded smarter than the other and should therefore be used. We speculated that intelligence meant that it was not just information, but also a sort of idea on how it could be used.
It's already interpreted.
Yes.
It's more presented for a user.
On the present website, it talks about information.
It also mentions intelligence, and we chose to talk about labor market information as a kind of general term, also in order not to make things too theoretical or too complex.
Then there's a wish to include European countries outside the European Union, at least candidate countries, not everybody, but candidate countries at least, or EUS economic community. And EURES network we mentioned, and you must expand on that. I'm not quite sure what you mean.
Okay, you have this section, interesting European sources, and here the Euro Guidance Network should be mentioned. Yeah, the EURES network is also not mentioned in that section. Yeah, and there are plenty of national reports on educational systems around, so maybe that the tool you're now designing will somehow make an intelligent combination of some of the resources already available. So.
But that's a real challenge. We acknowledge that.
Okay.
But thank you very much. I think we had some complementary inputs and very interesting, and we will bring that to Cedefop and to the teams or their web teams or their project teams that will further develop and talk probably also with you or bring it to the Euro Guidance Network for further, so that you can be further involved in its development.
When do you expect to be in operation?
That's a good question, but I cannot answer it.
1 year?
I would ask Pedro if you still see him out there. He is the project officer for this project. So it's like now on this demo, but probably as soon as possible. But what that mean, I'm not sure. I cannot. I would not say I cannot say it. Okay, thank you all, and I wish you a pleasant continuation of the conference, or a good journey home, or a good last conference day tomorrow, depending on your situation. I wish you all good luck, the best of luck with your work, and maybe we'll meet somewhere else at another occasion. Thank you very much.